Hey, welcome to Fathering Our Future, the podcast for dads. I'm Anthony Vandegrift, and I'm not the perfect dad, but every day I am trying to be better. And today I want to talk to you about how to serve the mama in your home. The model that is constructed for us as husbands is to be willing to dissolve ourselves of preference and individualism for the benefit and service of our wife. That's our model. That's how we serve our wife. That's how we properly love our wife. If you're a dad who wants to embrace your God-given mission, make sure you subscribe to Fathering Our Future wherever you listen to podcasts. You can also get more content on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. And if you want even more than that, then head over to www.fatheringourfuture.com. So normally I wouldn't come into the podcast and talk about something like this because I'm not a woman and I don't claim to understand women in their entirety or what they need or what they want. I don't claim that. I don't know that any man in their right mind does, and I don't mean that as some derogatory expression. We barely understand ourselves, so to claim that we understand women, it's just out of the question. But I feel fairly confident in the information that I have to share with you today because I've extracted all of this from a previous episode that I did with my wife, who is a remarkable woman and understands women a lot better than I do or you do. And she shared some really great tips that I'm going to share with you again today. Now, if you want to go back and reference that episode, you can go to fatheringourfuture.com. My wife's name is Lindsay Vandegrift. I believe the episode was called What Moms Need, and we did that way too late at night. I would really encourage you to watch that because I'm so good looking, but we did that way too late at night, and our charisma is just funny. I think it's funny because I love us. You might think we're dorky, but you're wrong. So anyway, I want to talk to you about how we can serve our wives, how we can take care of mom. So in light of Mother's Day just passing, I'm sure you got her some nice things, but we can do a lot more than just buying nice things for our wives. That's not really how we serve our wives. That's not really how we take care of mom. You should give gifts to your wife. Your kids should be a part of that process. They should think it's a great thing to give mom gifts. So include them in that. But understand that this is one of the lesser ways that you actually serve your wife. Now, biblically, the foundation that we have as husbands is found in Ephesians chapter number 5. Now, before we like to point to the verse that says wives are to submit themselves to their husbands, we've got to read the verse that comes right before that. Husbands, love your wives, even as Christ loved the church and gave himself for it. The model that is constructed for us as husbands is to be willing to dissolve ourselves of preference and individualism for the benefit and service of our wife. That's our model. That's how we serve our wife. That's how we properly love our wife. And that's hard to do. That's a high calling. That's difficult. That is difficult to achieve. And it's only by grace that we're able to do it. But that's the goal that we aim for. And so we have to know how we can better serve our wife. And that's what I want to help you with today. Because it's not just about buying gifts. It's not just about spending a whole lot of money on something that's going to not be fashionable in 6 months. It's more than just a spa treatment. There are ways that we operate in our relationship with our wife. Those ways will serve her in a way that will have longevity. Those things that we can do will help her, and it will also help our children. The reason that we should serve our wife, beyond just because it's what the Bible says we should do, is because it strengthens our relationship, it strengthens our marriage, but then it also sets our wife up for our children to see. When your children see how much you love mama, when they see how much you think of their mom, they will follow suit. They will love her in a crazy way, and they will look to do good things for her in a crazy way because they've seen you model that. So taking care of mama, serving your wife strengthens your marriage, it strengthens your home, it gives your children so many wonderful benefits. But let's get into some of the things that we can do. Now, my wife went in circles on this one point, and I have made an emphasis on this point this year, and that is communication. Everything will come back to communication. And this is a hard thing sometimes for us to do as men because we don't always like to talk. We like to internalize a lot of things, but communication is where it is at. And communication done right is when we are open, vulnerable, and transparent with information. When you practice right communication with someone and it gets reciprocated back to you, you're building trust. You are creating a foundation of trust. And it's on top of that foundation that relationship can be constructed. So if you want to have a stronger relationship with your wife, if you want to build trust, it's all pointing back to communication. You've got to communicate with your wife. So be intentional with your communication with your wife. This is one of the things that I wish had been stressed to me before I ever got married, is how to have good, intentional conversation with my wife. What to actually talk about. Your conversations with your wife need to be a lot more than just the surface level of, this is what happened to work, this is what happened at work today, and I'm tired. That's not communication. That's not communication done right. You need to go into your feelings. You need to open up a little bit. Tap into those emotions that you try to hide away. Tell your wife how you feel. And your wife will do that with you, and it will be a little easier for her to do with you. It'll be a lot easier when you actually start to reciprocate it back to her, because this is kind of going back and forth. This is what happens with communication. This is how the relationship builds. You give some, she gives some, you give more, she gives more. It's just this constant act of giving. So as you open up, she can open up more, but you have to pay attention. One of the big parts of communication is listening. You have to listen to what your wife is going through. What is she worried about? What stresses her out in life right now? If she works, what is she dealing with at work? How does she feel about the kids? Is there anything else going on? And it's not always bad. Sometimes there's a lot of good that happens too. But pay attention to those things. What is she like? What are her interests? What is something that she's always wanted or always wanted to do? When you listen and you communicate, you are actually extracting the needs of your wife. And if you're to serve her, now you have something to serve. Now you actually have direction for the service that you are to provide. What does she need? You're not going to learn that if you don't communicate with your wife. And it's more than just listening. You've got to talk too, because as you communicate, again, she's going to start communicating more. And this gives you a greater capacity in serving your wife because you learn more information about her. You get more of what she needs, and this gives you the opportunity to serve her in an even greater way. Part of this is the second point that my wife brings up, acknowledgement. Your wife does a lot. She does a lot for you. I came across a study somewhat recently that talked about just the dynamics of the family structure with women working more than they used to years ago. So there's more women who are actually in the workforce today. There's more homes today that are structured where both the man and the woman work, and it's not just to where the man works and the wife's at home taking care of the home. It was going into all of these other dynamics. But one thing that they pointed out is that even when the husband and the wife both work full-time jobs, the woman still takes a greater load at home. Wives do a lot. They work a whole lot. Even if they have a job, they come home and they outwork us at the home majority of the time. So they are putting in the work. You've got to see that. You've got to acknowledge that. And you have to communicate that you acknowledge that. You have to tell your wife that you appreciate the things that she's doing. If she cooks dinner, let her know you appreciate the fact that she has made dinner. It's work. It takes time. It's not always enjoyable. Even if it is something that kind of alleviates stress and it's just something to get your mind off of what you're going through, it still takes work. It still requires an effort to be put forth. I'm pretty sure you're thankful that your wife actually puts forth an effort when she makes food for you. Acknowledge that. Talk to her and tell her that you appreciate her. You appreciate her going to work. You appreciate everything she does at the house. You could also start to include yourself, and this is the other thing that my wife brought up, this proactive assistance, looking for these opportunities to serve her. So you know that if your wife comes home, let's say your wife works, she comes home from work, there's dishes to be done, there's laundry to be done, and even if she is typically the one who handles all of that, it says a lot when you get up and you say, hey, let me take care of the dishes. Why don't you go sit down? Why don't you go play with the kids? I'm always the fun parent. Why don't you go be the fun parent? And why don't you let me do some of this? Why don't you let me serve you and do something, take something off of your plate before you even get to it? Being proactive in how we assist. And again, this gets looped back to communication, because if you actually know what your wife is doing, what the plan is, what the itinerary for the day is, what it looks like when everyone gets home from school and from work, you can step in and you can say, you know what? I knew this was going to be a big task. I went ahead and took care of it for you because I thought it would alleviate some of your responsibility. I wanted to help you a little bit more than I typically do. That goes a long way. So you communicate, and in communicating with your wife, you understand what her needs are. And now you understand where and how you can better serve your wife. You can do this through acknowledgments. You can do this through proactively assisting her. And then this was the big thing, and I think moms will appreciate this. Rest. My wife loves to sleep, but I have the gifting of sleep in the household. When I fall asleep, I am out. I wake up the next day and I get a full report of anything and everything that happened at night. I'm just a really, really heavy sleeper. My wife is not. So my wife is the one who typically gets up to tend to the kids and typically has to deal with whatever goes on if anything happens in the middle of the night, or if a kid comes down and wants to get in the bed. She's the one who doesn't end up sleeping. I'm the one who wakes up and realizes that there's a child drooling on my face. That's how it functions. But making sure that your wife has the opportunity to rest. And maybe this is where you let them have a day at the spa. Maybe this is where you let them go get a massage. Maybe this is a way that you can accommodate that. But it could also be, you know what? My wife likes to stay home and read books. So why don't I take the kids to the park? Why don't I take the kids out and give her 1 or 2 hours to just be by herself? Because we all need that alone time. We all need time to ourselves to just collect ourselves and feel like we have somewhat of a grasp on our own lives. Your wife needs that too. So you can serve her in that capacity by allowing her the opportunity to just rest and relax and not feel like there's responsibility or obligation to have to be up on her feet and always moving. Give her the opportunity to lay low. You might not always be able to do it, but if you look for the opportunities, I promise you will find them. But you're not going to know any of these things unless you communicate. And this is why my wife hammered this point. This is one thing that I'm not great at, but it's one thing that I am working on. And all of us as husbands need to work on this. Communicating with our wives. Know what they're doing. Know what they value. Know where they try to put in hard work so that you could acknowledge the fact, hey, I'm proud of you. You put a lot of effort into this and did a really good job. You have to acknowledge them. The proactive assistance, knowing everything that they're trying to do, seeing that they have their plate full, and thinking, you know what, I'm going to step in, I'm going to take some of this off of her plate, I'm going to alleviate some of her responsibility. You get that through communication. And then when your wife tells you, I'm so tired, I'm exhausted, I didn't get any sleep last night, this is another need that's being presented to you where you can listen, communication. You can listen, you can hear that, and you can serve that need by saying, you know what? Why don't you go out and get a coffee? Or why don't you let me take the kids? You stay home, take an hour or two to yourself, read a book, take a nap, just rest, relax. But you get all of that information. You get all of those needs through communication. So make sure you're talking to your wife. Make sure you're listening to your wife. And this is how you take care of mama at the house. This is how you serve your wife. You and your wife having a strong marriage only benefits your kids. Kids who grow up in a two-parent home have so many additional benefits statistically. You were setting them up. You were giving them examples and illustrations of attributes like love and grace and peace. You're showing them what relationship ought to look like. You're modeling so much for your children by taking care of your wife. So let's get away from just Mother's Day, singular. Let's try to throw in a few more days in every month. Let's make them special year round. Let's look for those opportunities. Let's communicate so that we can extract those opportunities for us to be able to serve our wives the way that God intended us to serve them. This is Fathering Our Future, the podcast for dads. I'm Anthony Vandegrift. Thank you so much for being with me, and I hope you'll join me next time. Thank you again for listening to Fathering Our Future. If this episode has served you or you believe it will serve another dad in the future, make sure that you leave a like, a comment, a review, or share this so that it can reach another dad. And so that you don't miss out on another episode, make sure you subscribe to Fathering Our Future wherever you listen to podcasts. And again, for more great content, head over to www.fatheringourfuture.com.